Welcome to our final webinar of 2015, SEO Need to Know in 2016. We have about a half an hour worth of materials scheduled for this morning, and we want to thank you, first of all, for joining us this late in the year. We know that a lot of people are on vacation, and we appreciate the effort that those of you who have attended have made to join us. We have a lot of material to cover during this webinar, and we're going to be moving through it quite rapidly. We won't have time to answer questions during the presentation itself, but we have reserved time to answer questions when we're done. To that end, if you have questions that occur to you while we're doing the presentation, please type them into the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll make sure that we get to them at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and we anticipate making the recording available to those who have signed up and to the public sometime in the next couple days. If we don't get to it by the end of this week, it will be posted on our website early next week, and we'll send out a notice of where you can find that. And so there's no need to take notes. So we'll also make the presentation materials, including the PowerPoint slides, and also some additional supplementary materials available to you as well after the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started today by looking at a hypothetical. I want you to imagine this. The time is somewhere in the near future, probably not in 2016 or 2017, but we're getting near to this. The place, let's say San Francisco, although it could be really any town, anywhere in the country, or for that matter, anywhere in the world. The setting for this example is on public transportation. So picture somebody on a bus or in the on the BART system in San Francisco. It's a potential client, and they're looking at their cell phone or they're using their internet-connected watch, and they're conducting a voice search. And they ask Google something to the effect of, "Can I stop bill collectors from calling me?" And instead of just returning a page of results through which that person would browse and determine which one best answers their question, Google or another search engine that they ask, whether it's Siri or anything else, may end up saying, well, how many calls are you getting? Or what bills are they trying to collect? Or does this involve a home mortgage? Does it involve an auto loan? Does it involve credit card? And the searcher, your potential client, may interact with the search engine in a way that's much more like a conversation than like using it as a reference tool. This is where the search engines have been heading for some time. To a certain extent, it's where they're at already. And this pace is only going to quicken, and we're going to see it quicken throughout the next year, and it's going to accelerate at a more and more rapid rate as the years go on. And so you can picture a scenario where the search engine asks a bunch of questions, interacts with this person, finds out that they've got a mountain of debt, and then ultimately says, well, you may need to speak with a bankruptcy attorney. And it may be something that's occurred to the person before. It may be something that they're just coming to that realization as well with Google or the other search engine's guidance. And at that point, once the person agrees that this virtual assistant, which will be the search engines of the future, is going to ask something like, would you like me to find an attorney for you? And if the person says yes, then Google may ask, would you like me to look close to your office or to your home? Or it may say, I've located 5 attorneys within a mile of your office and 7 within a mile of your home. Which would you prefer? And the potential client may say, my office. And then it may say, of those 5 attorneys, 4 have nothing but positive reviews, and 1 appears to have some disciplinary record, or something like that. Would you like me to give you all 5 results, or exclude the outlier, or would you like to only look at ones that have X number of positive reviews, or whatever the criteria may be? Eventually, you can see this interaction going back and forth to the point where the person is making an appointment, but the search engine is really doing it for them. The search engine is looking in their calendar. The search engine is looking in the attorney's calendar and coordinating the appointment. Once the appointment is booked, the information about what to bring to the appointment would be automatically transmitted from the firm to the client. Reminders would be sent, directions would be given, and this in-person or over-the-phone consultation would be ultimately facilitated. This is where we're heading, folks, and it's much closer to reality than a lot of people realize, because a lot of people are still thinking about search engines in a more primitive sense. Today, there are two presenters. My name is Dan Jaffe. I'm an attorney who practiced law for many years before going into technology full-time. I'm licensed to practice law in Washington State and in Arizona. And Victoria Blute, who is our community manager, who takes care of our webinars, who writes a lot for our blog, and generally is in charge of educating our clientele about the search engines, about internet marketing in general, and about where things are heading. This is the order that we're going to be presenting in. Victoria is going to handle part one. She's going to go over how the search engine works, how the search engines work, and talk about some best practices for this coming year. She's going to start out very foundationally. And so for those of you who already have a good grounding in how the search engines work, a lot of this may be redundant or basic. Stick through it, though, because she's going to present some things that are actionable and worthwhile, even for people who are very advanced in terms of their search engine knowledge. And her presentation is going to be the bulk of this webinar. And then I'm going to jump in for a second part and talk about SEO traps, pitfalls, things not to do, things, and then have a couple suggestions of things that you should do to end on a positive note. And then from there, we will turn to questions and answers. So with that, I am going to turn the floor over to Victoria. And you're going to see a lag in screen for just a moment there while Victoria gets settled. Victoria, can you hear me?
I can, Dan. Thank you. I'll go ahead and get this set up here. Okay. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Here is a quick guide to what I'll be talking about during my presentation. As Dan said, first we're going to make sure that we've got everybody up to speed with a quick explanation of search engines and how they work. Then we'll go ahead and talk about what's going to matter for search engine optimization in 2016. Here's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the value of content for your blog or your website, as well as alternative presentation methods like videos. Then we'll go over some of Google's guidelines, the ones that will be, in our opinion, some of the most valuable to lawyers in 2016, as well as discussing the importance of the long-tail search and why lawyers should consider those as they're thinking about their SEO strategy. Lastly, we will talk about recent developments with social media like Facebook and how that's going to relate to search engine optimization this year. So let's get started. As I said, I'm going to do a quick recap of how search engines work and maybe a little bit of history here too, so we can see how these elements affect what we'll need to know about search engine optimization this year. So firstly, we'll talk about how search engines work. They work by finding, gathering, and displaying relevant information to those who are searching for it. And there are three basic steps here that happen. The first is crawling. So spiders, bots, crawlers, whichever name you prefer, Google has them and they are busy crawling the web. They follow links from page to page and see what's there. Google then sorts the pages by content and some other factors. Once Google finds a web page and figures out what's there, it adds that page to its massive 100 million gigabyte index. Google does this so that it can quickly access the information when a search engine user makes a relevant query. The last step is retrieval, and that's what all the crawling and indexing was for in the first place. At this point, Google gets a query and quickly decides what's most relevant. Then it pulls that information from its index and delivers those pages as search results. So essentially, that is the quick and dirty on how search engines do what they do. Search engines were not always so easy to use, however. Here we'll talk a little bit about the history behind Google and how we've gotten to where we are today. So the year is 1996. Google has hit the search engine scene. At that time, searching was primarily keyword-based. Sites were ranked based on how many times a keyword showed up or mentions on other sites, pretty primitive. So at that point, having all the world's information stored somewhere was theoretically really brilliant, but it had some problems when the search engine was actually put into use. Because Google's search methods weren't all that refined, it left a lot of room for people who wanted to try and trick the search engine to have web pages with not a lot of content or information ranked more highly than they deserved. So this was the beginning of black hat search engine optimization. Black hat SEO was a real problem for search engines because Google's goal is to provide quality websites to people who are looking for them. People want answers to their questions, Google wants to answer them. Unfortunately, because many people want to have their website returned on the very first page of search results or at the mystical top of Google, people sort of found ways to trick the search engine into ranking low-quality sites much more highly. And these sorts of practices became a really big temptation for companies who were looking to get their websites on the search engine. And this is really a different time for SEO. Black hat providers were filling search engines with nothing but spam. And with a keyword-based system, you could stuff a website with keywords regardless of what other content was there or how natural the prose sounded and have it rank highly. But that was really frustrating for users. Here they were looking to resolve problems through search, and instead they might find a website that was just full of spam, not full of answers. So black hat providers were making a lot of money, but Google was getting very frustrated. This was not what the company had envisioned when it set out to help people answer their questions. So at that point, Google realized it needed to get smarter. As I've said in a webinar from last week, Google employs some very clever, bright people. These people are busy writing and changing Google's algorithms to give search engine users what they're really looking for. As a result, pages today are ranked on 200 and more different factors, one of which is the quality of the content that's provided. Google later introduced search algorithms like Panda and Penguin into the mix, and these algorithms are busy searching the internet for web spam. Panda came out in 2011, and that's focused on finding low-quality websites, ones that offer up thin content, nothing that's adding anything new to the conversation. Penguin was introduced a year later, and we'll talk about that a little more in some slides I have, but this algorithm is busy decreasing the rankings of websites that are violating Google's webmaster guidelines. The bottom line is that Google is getting smarter about spotting content that does nothing for users. These algorithms are making search engines better. Google cares a lot about high-quality content because the company recognizes that its users do too. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. Google has always valued high-quality content since it was created in the mid-90s, and that really seems unlikely to change at any point in the future. And that's not a big surprise. People tend to ask questions to search engines because they want to learn something new, and high-quality content is very useful. There are other features of high-quality content that make it extremely valuable to search engines, as well as search engine users and referral sources. High-quality content is significant. It answers important questions. It's unique. Readers should expect that your content adds something new to the conversation. It's also insightful. So aside from adding something new, it makes intelligent observations about the topic at hand. And lastly, high-quality content is trustworthy. Readers should be able to trust your expertise as an authority in the field and that information they're receiving is accurate. Writing high-quality content helps potential clients establish why they should trust you, why they should listen to you, and eventually why they should hire your firm over many others. Google not only likes high quality content, it also likes high quality content that's published on a regular basis. So with what we know about how Google's bots work to search the web, again, not a big surprise. Google wants to organize the world's information, and the more information that's there, the more Google has to work with. Google is looking for new websites and new pages all the time, so it can continue to add to its index and retrieve those results when they are relevant to people. Where content is concerned in 2016, attorneys will also want to keep in mind that Google has some algorithm updates that could affect their sites if they are not prepared for them. Google intends to release an update to Penguin, which I mentioned in the last slide. That's the search algorithm that's designed to hunt down spammy sites and demote their ranking and search results in early 2016. This update is expected to work in real time, and that means if your website is in violation of Google's guidelines, it may take a hit very quickly now that Penguin is scouring the web around the clock. That said, website owners who are adhering to Google's best practices may see their websites rewarded with better rankings and traffic. For those attorneys who aren't prepared for the Google update and experience a loss in rankings and traffic, you may also be in luck in that by fixing these violations, the real-time aspect of this update may help your site bounce back a little faster. It's nice when Google gives us a heads up about what policies or algorithms it's changing, but one thing that we're discovering is that Google is making search algorithm updates it does not even announce. And while Google has not said anything, there's enough evidence to suggest that something is going on recently with the quality guidelines, and that something is being defined as the Google Phantom updates. We saw one first in May of 2015 and again in November of this year, and these updates seem to revolve around sort of the major components of what makes a good website. So Google is looking for thin content, scraped content, duplicate content, spammy links, that sort of stuff, and may not even be telling us about it. So that is something for lawyers to keep in mind. So another thing to think about in 2016 is content that comes in the form of alternative presentation. Text, of course, being the most obvious way to provide content, and the benefits to writing high-quality content are numerous, but there's also benefit in educating website visitors in other ways that engage them. There's a recent study that was put out by Cisco that notes that by 2017, videos will account for nearly 3/4 of consumer internet traffic. Alternative presentations, such as videos, are an important part of how the future of search will work, but it's about more than just making a video. If a video is poor quality, not very interesting, too long, or otherwise, your plan to engage website visitors may backfire. However, making a high-quality educational video is much less expensive than it used to be, and in many cases, it is very effective. For example, YouTube gets more than 1 billion unique visitors monthly, and with the exception of Facebook, that's more than any other channel on the web. So how come? What's going on here? Videos are naturally engaging and they require very little effort on the part of the person viewing them, and yet they can be educational and informative. Sometimes they're also even quite entertaining. I think a prime example of this might be found in this quirky video subgenre called unboxing. Unboxing videos are really interesting. These are videos with millions of views that are dedicated to exactly that, unboxing products, giving viewers the experience of unwrapping an exciting new toy or gadget for the very first time. It sounds a little crazy, but something about this is appealing to viewers. They get an open, honest look at a commercial product and all that it does or doesn't include. It entertains the viewer as they gather information about a product and make a decision about whether to purchase it. And as I said before, people use search engines to do research. Watching a video about a product, for example, is one very easy way to do that. Viewers also find these videos to be emotionally satisfying, which is quite interesting. The psychological journey of an unboxing experience actually gets our brains to release dopamine, which is the feel-good brain chemical involved with happy feelings we have after, say, making some sort of luxury purchase for ourselves. And the same dopamine response happens even if we're not actually the ones doing the unboxing. So while you may not have an exciting, tangible product to advertise to your potential clients as attorneys, consider that videos are becoming increasingly popular ways for people to get answers to their questions. Pardon me. And it's one that, with a little time and effort on your part, it can be a powerful way to reach clients without breaking the bank. Google itself has recently begun adding videos to its search result pages, and that means that lawyers may want to consider adding videos to their law firm's website. Google extends its quality policies to videos too, so lawyers will want to check out Google's video best practices to ensure that their videos are meeting quality standards and that these videos get seen by the right individuals. So if we're going to talk about how much content matters, whether that's text or alternative presentation, we should also talk about the rest of what Google expects from websites. Taking Google's fundamental rules to heart will help us quickly add in new expectations for 2016 to what we already know. Google itself divides up its guidelines into 3 sections. That's design and content guidelines, technical guidelines, and quality guidelines. We're going to look at design and content first. So while these aren't the only recommendations that Google makes in its design and content guidelines, these were a few of the ones that stuck out to me. The first has to do with useful, information-rich sites. Google says, create a useful, information-rich site and write pages that clearly and accurately describe your content. And that plays to what we've been talking about in the previous slides. Google wants high-quality content, so do search engine users. So by ensuring that your content is easy to read, easy to understand, Google can determine when that content is relevant to a query, and the person asking the query can quickly make use of the information that you've provided. If they come to expect that your website regularly posts this kind of content, they may well come back again and again to learn more. And if they also feel that they can trust the information that you offer, it can help them make a decision about hiring your law firm or recommending you to somebody else. The second is, what are people asking? Google says, think about the words users would type to find your pages and make sure that your site actually includes those words within it. So keywords are important, but in a different sense than they used to be. The volume of your keywords won't somehow get you better rankings, but using phrases that involve these words and address questions that might come along with those words will help you, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get into Longtail Search in a minute. The third has to do with avoiding user frustrations. In this case, sitemaps. Google says, offer a sitemap to your users with links that point to the important parts of your site. Users not only want to answer their questions and fast, but they also don't want to do mental gymnastics to find those answers. I earlier talked about the fact that videos are often effective because they convey information with very little effort on the part of the viewer. The same sort of idea, I think, applies to sitemaps. You want to make it absolutely as easy as possible for your readers to get around your website. Internet users in 2016 have very little patience in the way of dealing with speed bumps for getting the information that they want. So if users get frustrated, they are not likely to return to your website, no matter how fantastic the content is. So next up, we'll talk about Google's technical guidelines. Again, not an exhaustive list, but these are ones I think that may be particularly valuable to get you started. These are the ones that really cater to how users experience your website from several angles. The first one has to do with thinking about how other people view your site. Google says to test your site to make sure that it appears correctly in different browsers. The way you see your website isn't the only way your website is viewed. People use all sorts of devices and browsers to search the web, and as I mentioned in the previous slide, you'll really want to avoid frustrating people. If they're struggling to access your site from a particular browser, they are going to be frustrated. The second point is that good content is not equivalent to a good website. Google says to monitor your site's performance and optimize load times. Good content is really, really important to your website or blog, but again, if your site is glitchy or takes a long time to load, I would not expect searchers to stick around. We really live in a time where there's just not patience for things we can't access immediately, particularly on the internet. The third point I wanted to make is about the crawlability of your website. Google says to help Google fully understand your site's contents, make sure that you're allowing all of your site's assets to be crawled. Surely you would be very unhappy if you're putting in the time and the effort to write great content and it's not being seen properly by Google, which in turn means that potential clients aren't seeing it either. Lastly, I want to talk about Google's quality guidelines. Here we'll talk about some of the basic principles that guide quality. And for the most part, these are just reinforcements of what we've talked about earlier. Dan will go into some specific aspects of what not to do if you want to avoid your site being demoted by Google, but the basic idea is this. Google has famously said to make pages for users and not for search engines. And again, with all that we've talked about in terms of the value of high quality content, you can see why. People have a need for and prefer high quality content. But conveniently, that also happens to be a big part of what search engines want. Secondly, could you tell a Google employee about what you're doing? If you're engaging in black hat SEO practices, or you have that sinking feeling that what you're doing might not be above board when it comes to rankings and traffic, ask yourself, could you honestly tell a Google employee what you're doing? If you feel a little funny about doing that, you may want to consider a different strategy. Lastly, as I said earlier, the uniqueness of your content matters. The internet would have nothing new to offer if search engine users would have nothing new to offer search engine users if everyone just wrote the same thing. Attorneys will want to consider that each day millions of searches are made that themselves are totally unique. Google has never seen them before. And as Dan mentioned in our content planning clinic last week, one major myth that we see often is that search engines are dumb and so are clients. And this definitely is not the case for either. In response to these unique sort of searches, as well as complex or obscure queries, Google is busy improving their algorithms, and they've even started working on an artificial intelligence machine learning called RankBrain, and that's designed for the express purpose of handling complicated queries in ways that people naturally ask questions. So Google in 2016, here we are. It's really no secret at this point that mobile device use is on the rise. How much does that matter though? I would not be surprised if at least some of you are viewing this webinar from a mobile app that allows you to do so. We are living in a time that allows us to be freer than ever before. We are not chained to our desktop if we want to access the internet. And recent research seems to be suggesting that mobile use has no sign of slowing down. In a study that I looked at by the Pew Research Center, this study indicated that roughly 2/3 of adult Americans own a mobile phone, and that's an increase from the 35% who owned a smartphone in 2011. Nearly a fifth of those users are partially or totally smartphone reliant, either because A, they lack access to a home internet connection, or B, they simply lack access to other internet options besides their mobile phone. These sorts of statistics are definitely something that Google has in mind, particularly as we move into 2016. They have recently published their 160-page PDF of guidelines, and one new area that we're seeing focus on is mobile capability. Because Google wants to make an easy and enjoyable experience for mobile users, some of the new mobile features covered in the guidelines for quality raters to consider are topics such as difficult mobile data entry, i.e., typing on a mobile phone can be hard. Additionally, voice recognition does not always work. Also, how a site works on small screen sizes. Say, even if a site is quote-unquote mobile friendly, a small screen size can still make some phone features quite difficult to use. Other aspects of difficult to use web pages, side scrolling, menus and navigation that don't work on mobile phones, improperly sized images, the inability to access things like Flash. Also to consider internet connectivity problems. Now, page speed is not a part of Google's mobile algorithms. However, Google does note that opening apps or voice command recognition and load times can be slower on mobile devices. Responsive design is another aspect that ties into this and will be an important part of 2016. Responsive design handles a lot of the above-mentioned issues, but what do I mean when I talk about responsive design? A responsively designed website is one that, regardless of browser, device, or otherwise, provides website visitors with an optimized viewing experience. Nobody can control what device or what browser somebody is using. So instead, web designers have opted to make websites that have the capability to be much more flexible. Responsive design is, as I said, centered around creating this optimal user experience for those who visit your website from any browser, any platform, any device. And part of that optimized experience is the functionality and aesthetics of the website itself. Is the content easily readable? Is it easy for people to navigate? Are images properly sized? So responsive website design used to be a trend that was gaining popularity, but as we're seeing, as technology is developing alongside the demands of users, most websites are now responsive. As a result, at this point, there is no excuse to provide users with a website that is not responsive. One convenient feature of all LawLytics websites is that they're responsively designed, and that can help lawyers focus not so much on the technical aspects, which can be taken care of here, and instead focus on writing great content for their websites. So, as I said earlier, we'd get back to talking about how keywords are a small part of the overall search equation, and here we are. We are going to talk about long-tail searches. So, one important aspect of search that is worth understanding is really disabusing people of the notion that clients simply type in keywords when they search. They tend to type in actual questions, and some of those questions are very complicated. So there's a lot going into what results Google decides are relevant to a query. And as I said earlier, Google is working on RankBrain. RankBrain is the artificial intelligence that is working on understanding how we naturally use language, because that's a big part of it too. People ask things in all sorts of different ways, and surely lawyers are familiar with clients who describe their case or their problem in varied sort of ways. It's a similar thing that happens with Google here. People ask Google using all sorts of different terms and things like that, and so making sure you're thinking about long tail searches can help you attract the right sort of traffic to your website. People are asking very specific sort of things. It's not just keyword based anymore. One other feature that sort of ties into the long tail search is what Dan was describing at the beginning of our webinar here with IPAs, the Intelligent Personal Assistant. You'll see here that I have a little picture of Siri, which came out with the iPhone 4, and there was a lot of hype about it. Unfortunately, Siri was sort of a flop in its original form. Siri was meant to help you send messages and set reminders and search for information. What people ended up discovering was that Siri a lot of times did not understand what you were saying, would give you back results that were not relevant to what you were asking, and people are currently working on that to make those better. One notable example is Amazon's Alexa that has come out this year, which is supposed to help you do all sorts of different things and sort of sits in your home and you can ask it questions. We're really working toward a time when these intelligent personal assistants actually understand what we're saying and may even ask us some follow-up questions to really make sure we're getting what we're asking for. So one last point I wanted to talk about here is social media. Facebook recently made a deal with Google that may be of interest to attorneys. I should start by saying that Facebook has allowed Google to index parts of its site since roughly about 2007. And that was a choice on Facebook's part that made a lot of sense for the two competitors. It confers an advantage to each company. Facebook gets free Google traffic, and Google then at that point is able to provide its users with extra content that may better meet their search needs. This recent deal between Facebook and Google also really ties into the importance of mobile search. This agreement between the two companies intends to give a better mobile experience to those who find and click on Facebook content via mobile Google searches. Android smartphone users who are doing Google searches will now be able to see some content through Facebook's app, including public profiles. So, what does this all mean for lawyers? First, we should consider that social media presence can be valuable for law firms, period. I came across an article in Forbes recently that suggests employers may be quite suspicious of those who don't have a Facebook when they're thinking about a potential employee because of the normalization of social media presence. Facebook is really ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And because of how often we use it, people may feel suspicious or, frankly, just frustrated with law firms that don't have social media presence. In an age where so many things revolve around the internet, no matter what device we're consuming content from, tech abandonment can raise some red flags. But more than just that, this new deal between Facebook and Google could be advantageous for attorneys. So this deal currently only affects Android users, but it would not be too shocking to see it extended to iPhones or elsewhere. And because Google can now crawl personal updates and statuses that have been made public, it may be worth lawyers' time to post legal content to their personal Facebook page and make that publicly available. Lawyers who choose to do this may see benefits from Google's new ability to crawl this sort of information. Google will be able to provide access to content that may better meet the needs of searchers and potential clients, and it may also give law firms the ability to increase their presence from a social media perspective, because more relevant search results can now be made available through Facebook. And with that, I'm going to pass the presentation back to Dan, and he is going to give you some very valuable information about what not to do with Google.
Thanks, Tori. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, great. Well, so I want to start with something that Tori was talking about earlier on in her presentation, which is the increasing prevalence of real-time application of the search engine algorithms. And I think what we're going to start seeing is a much closer relationship in time between actions that are taken, both positive and negative, on behalf of attorneys by search engine optimization people, or actions that attorneys take on behalf of themselves and their firms. And in the past, there was a very real attenuation between the actions of webmasters, especially those who were trying to cheat the system and manipulate Google, and the negative consequences. So, in other words, an attorney might hire a search engine optimization firm that calls them and offers to sell them links, for example. They may buy the links, and 6 months or a year may have gone by in the past between the purchase of those links and the implementation of them, and Google running an algorithm update that would then apply a negative consequence to the practice of getting those links. And I personally am very excited about the prospect of having these consequences happen more in real time, because attorneys will start to see more and more of a nexus between those negative practices that search engine optimization people continue to try to sell them because it's low-hanging fruit and stuff that did work in the past, and the negative consequences thereof. And it's kind of like taking a cigarette. If you knew that the cigarette was going to kill you tomorrow or instantly, it'd be much easier to say no than the idea of, well, it may have some negative health consequences sometime in the distant future. And so I think that as these algorithm updates continue to have more of a real-time application, the web is going to become a better place because there's going to be nowhere to hide for the people who would otherwise manipulate Google, which is just another way of saying present results that are not optimal for the people that are asking the questions that potential clients and referral sources ask of Google. The next consequence, if you will, that I see coming down the line more and more is that ignorance of best practices and frankly practices that shouldn't be done at all is going to be no defense. And so, in other words, Google and the other search engines continue to get smarter, and they know who you are. They know who your firm is, and they want you and your firm to be good citizens of the internet. And in the past, where you could hire a webmaster to do as many manipulative tactics as needed and figure it's going to last a year or maybe 2 years before the shoe drops and you have to start all over again because Google wipes it out, and it just had to do with that website or those practices. Expect that you are going to have more personal and business responsibility for the actions that are taken on your behalf or the actions that you take directly. One of the things that I think is going to become more and more apparent, and I'm seeing this in the sales pitches of various search engine optimization and web marketing firms already, is the stratification between organic and paid search marketing. A lot of companies are starting to sell paid search as opposed to organic because paid search can provide some value, and it's more instant at times and it's more measurable. But paid search is a calculated expense. So in other words, you're buying that advertisement is getting consumed. Once it's consumed, the money that you spent on that advertisement is gone forever. Versus organic, which is the natural rankings that concentrate on answering questions that people are asking of Google and the other search engines. When you have content on your website that truly ranks well because of the value that it provides to the users of the search engines, well, once the expense of creating that content is done, whether you've paid somebody to create that content for you or whether you've spent the valuable time that you have in limited quantity to write that content, that expense is done, but that page or blog post or other content item, video or whatever that you created continues to produce results as long as it remains relevant. To give you a quick illustration, this is a search page on Google for the search California criminal defense attorney. The results that are boxed in red are paid advertisements. So once somebody clicks on those, it's going to cost whoever has advertised there $50, $100, $150, whatever those clicks are going for. And you'll also notice that while the search here is for California criminal defense attorney, there are some local results, such as this, based on where the search came from. So I searched when I did the slide from Arizona, and so it's showing some ads from Arizona and then also some that are relevant to California. The next in blue here is the map listing, and this is a very good place to be, and it's free for now. And then down below are the organic results in green. And the organic results are where people typically look when they're seeking questions or answers to questions that they ask versus engagement with a particular business. So while California criminal defense attorney was done for illustrative purposes, if somebody were to type in a question that might be posed to a California criminal defense attorney, such as what are the penalties for assault with a deadly weapon, for example, people would look down here to get those results. And that's where you really want to be to capture the majority of what your potential clients are looking for. Now, to give you an alternative view of these results, let's take a look at how I see it. So I typically use an ad blocker. I use a program called AdBlock because I don't like to look at ads. I also don't like to watch commercials when I'm watching TV. So unless it's something that's live and there's some reason why I want to watch it in real time, like a football game or a debate, for example, I'm more likely to record it so I can skip over the commercials. Well, same applies here. And millions of people are using ad blockers. And even those that don't develop a certain amount of ad blindness, meaning that, let's go back to this other slide, when you search, once you realize that these are ads and it says ad here and it even tells you down here what you need to do to go or to click here to go and buy an ad for your own company. People develop ad blindness, so they don't even see these. They drift immediately down to these. Same with banner ads, same with all kinds of display ads. People are on the internet to consume content, not to consume advertising. In terms of things to avoid, and I won't end on a negative note here, I'll end on a positive note in just a few moments, so bear with me. Things that you should definitely avoid in 2016. And these are things that you should have avoided for a long time, but people continue to sell. So it's important to be aware of these things when people do cold call you. Avoid buying, trading, or in any other way unnaturally getting links, either from other people's websites to yours or from your website back to other people. So don't sell links and don't buy them. If somebody contacts you with a proposition to do some guest blogging on your site in exchange for a link back to their site, if somebody wants to trade links or do any kind of situation where they have multiple law firms, they're going to trade links, they're going to link all of them together. Avoid those things like the plague, because those things are directly against Google's webmaster guidelines. And anything that is done to get a link other than just somebody linking based on the content adding value is something that should be avoided. Under that category is also directory submissions. While there are some directories that can be helpful to attorneys in attracting clients and referral sources, most of those directories are very easy to submit to yourself, and there's only a handful of them at the most. Any search engine optimization company who is selling directory submissions beyond that is likely selling something that is not going to add any value and may actually detract from value, because a lot of the directories that are out there are spammy directories. The sole purpose is to, again, get a link back to your website. Content is extremely important. I'm going to end with basically a plea to you to, if you do anything at all, if you only do one thing, to create high quality content. But before we get there, because attorneys have realized how important content really is, there's this new industry that is starting to become more visible that sells recycled content. And in fact, one of our large competitors is now doing it. I won't mention names specifically, but here's how it works. You, as an attorney, need content. You don't have time to write the content. You basically go and to their website. You shop for content based on what your needs are, that you're a lawyer, any particular type of practice, and then you can buy articles. The problem is that those articles that they spent resources or money to write once are sold over and over again to multiple law firms, as well as to other businesses. And the problem with that is that Adding recycled content to your website doesn't add anything to the overall online conversation. In other words, it doesn't add any value in Google's perspective or from any other search engine's perspective that will help their users find new or more relevant information. If your only purpose of adding this content is to give your users who are already at your website additional information, and if that content is otherwise of high quality, then I can concede that there is some value there. But most attorneys that are using their website for marketing purposes want to attract new users, want to say something that's different, that sets themselves apart from their competitors. And buying recycled content is not only a way to not do that, but it's a way to send a message to the search engines that your site is not original, and so it probably ought to be ignored. The next thing that I want to caution about is design for the sake of design. There are a lot of bells and whistles that you can add design-wise to a website. In fact, your website could be as creative as any artistic designer could make it. But artisticness and uniqueness does not necessarily translate into a new good flow of new clients. In fact, the more artistic you get in some respects, the more jarring it may be to potential clients who are there to, again, get their questions answered. And the more it may detract from the ultimate goal of your website, which is likely to attract potential clients and referral sources, to engage them, to get them to like your firm, to get them to contact your firm, and ultimately to get them to either hire your firm or influence somebody who will hire your firm. And so beware of design for the sake of design. And then finally, a blanket category here. Anything that sounds too good to be true, the top of Google. I work with Google and can get you to the top. Sales pitches like that, things that seem to happen too quickly, things that seem to provide an enormous return on investment with really little effort or time. Those are things that are likely to be transparent to Google and the other search engines and likely to be counterproductive to you and your practice. So finally, what to do in 2016? From our perspective here at LawLytics, it's more of the same. And it's just with renewed vigor, and it becomes even more and more important with each passing year. And that's to invest in your firm's future. Well, how do you do that? How do you build something that not only will attract potential clients and referral sources today, but will continue to do that in the future without additional cost, complaint, or maintenance? Well, the answer is to create high quality content, or to have that high quality content created uniquely for your firm. It's essentially a matter of answering questions and answering them better. So by that I mean there are questions that your potential clients are asking, and there's questions that your potential clients should be asking, but don't necessarily have enough information to ask at this point. If you can do both, then you'll be well ahead of the competition, and you'll create something that will endure in value. If you haven't listened to it yet, I encourage you to go to our content planning webinar, which was recently done. We'll be doing more of those in the future, and really think about what your content strategy is going to be for the coming year or years. Creating a website that is truly an appreciating asset takes time and it takes planning. And so it's worth investing not only the time and the money that you might spend to have that quality content created, but to invest the time and effort into really thinking about how it should be implemented to best suit the needs of your clients and potential clients. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I see that some people have typed questions into the private chat area. Tori, have you been looking at the questions while I've been talking?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, I have, and I have several queued up here. Pardon me. So I have one question that I believe has to do with directories. It says, you mentioned that attorneys shouldn't do directory submissions. Does this also include AVO?
Avo's a different beast. Avo is not really something that you submit yourself to so much as it's already likely consumed your information as an attorney. And if you have a bar license, it's highly likely that if you go on Avo and look for yourself, you're there already. And we do see a value in claiming your Avo profile because people can find you on Avo, and people can that are referred directly to you may find you there by searching for your name, especially if your overall internet presence outside of Avo is relatively weak. And so claiming that Avo profile and filling it out is important. Now, I wouldn't get carried away and start answering a bunch of questions on Avo because those are things that are better served on your own website and blog because your own website and blog is an asset that you own and control. But engaging with Avo in by claiming your listing and taking control of that narrative is, I think, not only worthwhile, but I think it's an important defensive move. If you don't, people search for you, they go to Avo, they see nothing about you, and they're also exposed to all of your competitors. So I see Avo and other rating review sites, especially Yelp, and to a certain extent, Google and Microsoft are also starting to get involved in the ratings game. I see those as being different. The type of directory listings that I'm more cautioning you to avoid are obscure directories that just like all they do is like curate sites and have links back to them. People don't go to those sites, unless those sites happen to rank very well for searches that your potential clients might otherwise be conducting, which is very doubtful.
So one other question I have here, which I may jump in here and answer, I believe has to do with the slide you were discussing about ad blindness. The question is there any information about how real users look at Google results? And the answer to that is yes. So one part of Google that I find really interesting is thinking about how people interact with Google over time. So while people have always been asking Google questions, one interesting thing to consider is how they read those results. And there was an eye tracking study done not too long ago looking back from search results in 2005 to now, so that's 10 years worth of data. And what we're seeing is that people look at search results much differently than they used to, and there are several reasons for that. To give you a picture of what say like a heat map of the Google search results would look like in the past, if you can envision, say, a right triangle on your search results page, say that 90-degree angle is in the organic section, and from there we have a triangle moving out to the right. This is how people previously looked at search results. It was called the Google Golden Triangle, that people typically sort of skip the stuff at the top that might be ads. They start looking at the organic results. They may veer slightly to the right, but again, with ad blockers and that sort of thing, that has changed. But one interesting feature that has changed now is that golden triangle is no longer the standard for how people look at search results. And one of the things that is changing that is mobile devices. They have really conditioned searchers to scan vertically in like a rectangle shape rather than horizontally. Searchers are really looking for the fastest path to the desired content. Additionally, we also know that people are viewing more search results, more of those listings, and they're spending less time on each one. People used to spend, I believe in 2005, it was roughly about 2 seconds per listing. That's now down to about 1.15 seconds, more or less. So people are really trying to get the right information, and they're trying to get it very quickly. One other question I have here, Dan, I think it might be, these two might actually go together. What if I hired someone doing bad SEO for my firm, and what do I do if I have been using some of these tactics on my website?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a matter of, has the website been compromised by those bad practices to the point where it is no longer something that can be rehabilitated, or whether it's something that can easily be fixed. And most things can be fixed with some effort. And so the first thing to do would be to stop doing the bad practice, get rid of the vendors who are doing these bad things, and see from there. And once everything is cleaned up, hopefully that does the trick. Now, the problem often becomes when vendors do things off your website that you may no longer have control over. So, for example, we've helped rehabilitate attorneys' websites who have had thousands of links purchased for them through sites that have absolutely no relevance at all to their web presence. So, for example, we have seen attorneys who needed to go in and disavow links from Russian porn sites, for example, going back to their law firm. Nothing relevant about those at all. But the problem is suppose you hired somebody to get hundreds or thousands of links. It's nearly impossible to chase all of those down, and then it's just a question of, can they be disavowed with Google directly? In most cases, we've seen that the answer is still yes, with some effort. But it's really a matter of making a cost-benefit decision once you've realized that something needs to change, whether it's more cost and time effective to try to do it on your existing website, or whether it's better to go ahead and start over. The thing that I would recommend doing as quickly as possible, though, is getting rid of the bad practices and putting as much distance between you and anybody that does those bad practices as you possibly can. Because as I said earlier, I truly believe that the search engines will not see ignorance or past bad practices, but future intent to do better as necessarily being a valid excuse, at least over the short term. Tori, I see a bunch of other questions that have come in. Some of them I can handle. Do you have more, though, from the private chat channel?
I have one last one here. Now, I know we've talked about, in terms of content, the time to add content and high quality content is now. Yesterday, content is a really valuable part of people's websites, but I have a question here. When should I start adding video content?
Yeah, so I think that video content is an important aspect, but it should not come before you've got the written content on there. And that's because the written content still is what really drives search results. And it's what really engages most, at least more highly educated potential clients. Once you have the traffic, then it makes sense to start investing in adding other ways for them to consume information, such as video, infographics, and so forth. But the foundation should be written content.
And that's it for the questions on my end, Dan. How about the ones that you've got?
Okay, so I'm just going to go through these in the order that they came in. So the next question is: do you still need to add keywords into pages? Do you still need to add descriptions into images? So adding keywords into pages, there's really a couple different questions within this. There used to be a valid method called adding meta keywords to pages. It was basically an invisible to the human user piece of data that got added to the top of the page that had a bunch of keywords in it. So, for example, you would see them stuff with like Los Angeles bankruptcy, comma, Los Angeles attorney, comma, Los Angeles lawyer, comma, that type of thing. Those are absolutely worthless at this point. There is no reason to spend time doing those. In fact, if you have them, we believe that the safer practice is to go ahead and remove them. Now, the other part of the keyword question is whether keywords should be added into pages. Well, and when we talk about keywords, we can look at this from a couple different perspectives. You'll see pages that are spam full of keywords. So, Jim Johnson is the best criminal defense attorney who practices criminal defense law in criminal court. And over again, stuff like that doesn't make sense to the human readers. It doesn't add anything. Adding those kind of keywords, or adding at the bottom of the page, adding a list of every city that you want to attract traffic from, stuff like that, absolutely useless at this point and counterproductive. But when you think about how you're crafting your content on your page, it is important to think about what people will be searching for, because those things are going to make your page more relevant to their query. And so as long as you're answering their questions and framing their questions using language that they would likely use to search or to ask the questions of Google, for that matter, then you're doing great. And it probably makes sense to tune into one of the webinars that we're going to be doing early next year about how to structure your web pages, because when you're talking about adding these concepts that people search for, there are some structural expediencies, the way that the Google and other search engines digest pages, that can help you understand better where to put those things. And then in terms of adding descriptions to images, we believe it is still relevant to add at least alt tags, so that people who can't necessarily see the images, so visually impaired people for that matter, can at least get a description of what those images are about. So next question is, what do I do about negative reviews on Yelp? There's going to be a webinar that we're doing specifically to address that, and it's a huge topic in and of itself. The short answer is it really depends on what the review is, depending on what it said, how it's framed, and so forth. There's oftentimes a way to turn a negative review into a positive selling point. The other thing in a nutshell that's important to do is to try to encourage people to give you positive reviews when they have good things to say about you. So when positive reviews come spontaneously from real people that you've served and done a good job for, those really help to counterbalance the negative ones. But keep in mind that when you look at 10 reviews, for example, if 9 of them are positive and one of them indicates 1 star out of 5, for example, all the others are 4 and 5 stars, it's human nature that we're going to look at the lowest ranked one and figure out, well, is there something bad that I need to know? And so it's almost like driving by a wreck. It's hard to look away. And so it is important to address them in a way that that is constructive if you're going to address them. And then there's also some good points, depending on what the review says, to just ignoring it as well. Next question is, how important are reviews to ranking high in the search engines? Well, we don't pretend to know exactly what Google or the other search engines' algorithms are, but anecdotally, we have definitely seen evidence that having good reviews and having lots of reviews tends to help. It seems to make it more relevant. And when you look at reviews, you got to look at it from a couple different perspectives. So, assuming that you're a LawLytics member, you have the LawLytics review engine built into your control panel, which enables you to request reviews from clients and then also add reviews that clients have given you manually. Each of these creates its own search engine optimized page. And so, for that reason, if somebody's searching for something that is relevant to that review, it can help that particular review rank high in the search engines. And then if you're talking about reviews such as Google business reviews and so forth, I do believe that they do play a part in it. It wouldn't surprise me if Google said that Yelp reviews, for example, play a role as well, and others as well. So I think it's one of those things it's important to get the reviews if you can. They certainly don't hurt. Next question, and Tori, feel free to jump in if you have answers as well. I don't mean to monopolize.
Sure.
The next question is, we have many vendors approaching us about SEO. What do I base my decision on besides money? Well, as a law firm, you're going to get cold called probably daily about SEO. And think about this. If the person who's cold calling you about SEO was really as good as they claim to be, why are they spending their time cold calling you about SEO? How did they find you to cold call you in the first place? The blanket advice that I can give is that if somebody is calling you about SEO and promising things, especially if they're saying that they work with Google or they work for Google or they can get you to the top of Google or really mention Google in any way, I would run. I see very little value to engaging in people and with people in that capacity. And believe me, I still get calls for people that are looking at me as an attorney and an easy mark to sell SEO services to as well. And the fact is, there's probably a lot more snake oil being sold out there than there are actually valid, valuable services when it comes to SEO. So beware of that. And the other thing that you can really do to give yourself a good basis for making these decisions is continue to educate yourself. The more you know, the less susceptible you'll be to even talking to these people when they call. But if you do choose to talk with them, as you become more and more educated about SEO and what it really means, you'll end up having some fun playing with them to see to what great lengths they go to promise you results that they can't possibly promise and what kind of stuff that they make up. Let's see. We have a comment about the sound being good, which is good. I don't think there's a question there though. Okay, so question. I have a successful practice. I'm hiring an associate. I plan to retire in 5 years. Should we create a site just for him or add him to me? It's a nuanced question, and it really depends on what your goals are in terms of that associate. If your goals are to simply increase the business to give to that associate, and that associate is practicing in the exact same area of practice as you, it may be sufficient to just add that associate to your website. On the other hand, if you intend to either continue to take an interest in your firm, which your associate may take over after you retire, or if you want to motivate the associate, it may make sense to create a new site for him. And bear with me on this one. So let's say you have this associate who comes in and knows that he is making a 5-year commitment. During those 5 years, you want him to contribute greatly to your firm. You also want him to feel like he's building something of value for himself. So in other words, he's not going to work his butt off, and then in 5 years from now, when you retire, he's not going to have a job. So if you create a separate site for him, and motivate him to work on the site. So engage him to add content to it, to build a brand of his own. While you may still own that site and you're paying him to basically create the content for it, which is going to benefit you while he's working for you, it gives him the added motivation to develop his own voice under something that you currently own and control, with the idea that when you retire, he can then take it over and he has a brand for himself. It also may help differentiate him. And if he practices in an area of law that's not compatible to yours, then by all means, it's worth exploring having a separate website. Let's see. Bear with me for a moment. This is a longish question, and I'm just trying to digest it first. Okay, so there's a longish question that basically tells a common story about paying for a website for one company, paying for pay-per-click to another company, paying another company for SEO, paying for various directories. And the question is, can you evaluate for a lawyer what to do? And if you are the best choice and what can be eliminated, I think I'm spending too much and really getting not. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here. Not getting my money's worth. So yes, we can do an evaluation. And it really we have to look at the totality of everything that you've been doing. And this is a problem that I see a lot of attorneys get themselves into, because they pay for one thing and it doesn't seem to work, or it doesn't produce instant gratification. They get a call, they buy something else. That doesn't necessarily work either. Then they get a call, they buy something else, and then some things start working, but it's impossible to tell what is actually contributing value and what is just draining resources. And there are very few things beyond the content that provide value. SEO, organic manipulation, for example, if it doesn't involve directly creating high quality content, there's likely not a whole lot of value there. A website is axiomatic. You need to have a website one way or another, and it should be something that you own, that you control, and that doesn't take people off of your website. So, for example, if you're paying a company who does websites and directories, for example, I see that as a conflict of interest, because the website company, the website part of this company has to compete directly with the directory part of the company, because they both depend on Google and other search engines for ranking and for traffic. And I would evaluate whether you are being sent, or whether visitors are being sent from your website back to the directory company, whether they're the idea is you want people to get to your website and you want them to stay there. You want them to be a captive audience rather than being exposed to your competitors. And so, long story short, yes, we can do an evaluation. There's no easy answer, but the vast majority of services, especially those that cold call you to try to sell add-ons, are a waste of money, if not counterproductive. Next question is about a certain. This is Tammy. This is one of your questions about a certain web hosting company. And I'm not going to name the company, because I don't like calling out people that we compete with for business with. But the company that this person mentioned is a company that provides printed material for a range of companies. Basically, if you are any kind of company and you want something printed, they can do it for you online. They also happen to know that people that need things printed also sometimes need websites. And my opinion is this: you can't be great at everything. You can't even be good at everything. So you might as well be great at one thing. And the way that we've approached it at LawLytics is we're great at attorney websites and the content marketing that goes into those. And so if your question is, do you recommend this other company? My answer is no. I would not go with a company that divides their attention even between multiple industries. But that's obviously a biased opinion on my part because we are focused solely on lawyers here. And as a lawyer myself, I see the value in that. And then I have a comment that Yelp won't publish the good reviews. Yeah, I've heard that, and I think it's a matter of how the reviews are procured. I've also heard people complain that Yelp wants money to be able to display certain reviews or to suppress bad reviews. I really can't comment on whether that's true or not, but there is a certain amount of a strategy that goes into dealing with reviews like that. And again, we'll get to that in a future webinar. Let's see. Just going through a few more of those questions. Tori, if you have any others queued up, I'm just going through chronologically, and they keep coming. So
You got it. I do not have any more on my side at this time.
okay. Next question is how do you determine if the web vendor is using up-to-date practices? And it really is it's a matter of educating yourself because the webmaster is probably not going to say we're not using up-to-date practices, and if you don't know the difference, they're going to try to sell you whatever they have to sell you. And so I highly recommend going right to the source, looking at Google's webmaster guidelines. We will post a link to those guidelines along with the materials for this webinar when the webinar is available on demand, so you can check them out yourself. You can also just Google do a Google search, that is, for Google Webmaster Guidelines, and you'll see those. But I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to understand the basics of what are currently best practices. And once you start diving into those and you really question what you're being sold, especially for those that are cold calling you, the better off you'll be. And so it's definitely worth the effort. Next question is about does Google give extra SEO value to YouTube videos now that YouTube is owned by Google? It's a very good question, and we anecdotally have seen a lot of success by our customers who use YouTube to host their videos, even when they're posted on their LawLytics powered website. So, for example, LawLytics allows you to drag videos in and have them posted directly to your website using our video encoding engine. It also allows you to post them through third parties such as YouTube. And we've seen people have great success with both, but it would be hard to argue that Google doesn't have a vested interest in YouTube. And we've seen anecdotally people that use YouTube videos do very well. So even if you do use the video encoding engine in LawLytics, it does make sense from our perspective to also have your own YouTube channel where you post a copy of those videos. Now, like anything, YouTube can be used for spam, which can cause negative effects. And if somebody's trying to sell you YouTube optimization and they're putting links in the description, or they're doing we've seen all kinds of different tricks that people have tried to do using YouTube, including doing certain contests where to enter the contest where the firm's giving away something, you post a YouTube video, and then in the description of the video, you have to post a link back to the law firm. So those things are not good. Obviously, those are against Google's webmaster guidelines in and of themselves. So if you use YouTube to try to game the Google system, you probably won't have any better results than you would if you used any other medium to try to subvert Google's wishes. But if you use it in conjunction with their recommended best practices, it can only help. Let's see. I am out of questions in my queue. Tori, do you have any others?
I do not, Dan.
Okay, well, great. We're going to go ahead then and wrap this up. I really appreciate everybody's attention and attending this late in the year. I know many people are checked out and on vacation or just resting through the end of the year. And I think that the fact that you've attended and that you're still here at the end of this question and answer session speaks volumes to what you want to accomplish and what you will be able to accomplish this coming year when you put your mind to it. And so with that, I want to let you know that if you haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, and you'd like to be notified about other upcoming webinars, and we're going to be doing 2 webinars a week starting in early next year. And all of them will be on different relevant topics to marketing a law firm. Go to our website, LawLytics.com, go to the blog, and then in any blog post at the bottom, you can use that to subscribe to our newsletter, and then you'll get our newsletter, and along with that, you'll get notifications of new webinars as we announce them. And if you're a LawLytics member, just keep in mind that we are always here to help, whether it's through content creation for you, whether it's through coaching, strategy, content planning, whether you need something adjusted on your website, or whether you just want to talk it over and make sure that you've got the best strategy going into the coming year. Let us know. We're here. We'll be here all day tomorrow, New Year's Eve as well, and then back on Monday the 4th. Happy New Year, everybody.